Johnny Carson had a secret list. For 30 years as America's late-night king, he interviewed over 22,000 guests on The Tonight Show. But behind his professional smile, Carson kept a mental scorecard of the celebrities who truly impressed him. Only 9 guests ever made it into his inner circle, and what happened with some of them would shock you. The man who topped Carson's list wasn't who you'd expect, and the emotional breakdown this guest caused on live television revealed a side of Carson that millions of viewers had never seen before. But first, you need to understand the betrayal that cut Carson so deep, he never spoke to one of his former favorites again, even on his deathbed. Number 9. Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart wasn't just another Hollywood legend to Johnny Carson. He represented everything the host admired about dignity, wrapped in humility, talent without the ego. When Stewart stepped onto the Tonight Show stage, something shifted in Carson's entire demeanor. The professional mask slipped, and viewers got a glimpse of genuine admiration. One night in 1981 changed everything. The aging actor brought a poem he'd written about his recently deceased golden retriever, a simple tribute called Bo. As Stewart read the heartfelt verses about his beloved dog, something unprecedented happened. Johnny Carson, the man who'd perfected emotional control on national television, began to tear up. The studio fell silent except for Stewart's voice, reading about how his dog would wait for him every day, tail wagging, unconditionally loyal. When Stewart finished, Carson couldn't speak for several seconds. Behind the scenes, the crew was stunned. One makeup artist later revealed that in 15 years of working the show, she'd never seen Carson genuinely emotional about anything. That moment sealed Stewart's position as one of Carson's treasured favorites. After that night, Carson's staff knew that when Stewart was booked, their normally demanding boss would be in his most generous mood. He'd extend segments and give Stewart whatever time he needed. But Stewart's emotional honesty was just the beginning of Carson's carefully curated list. Number 8. Bob Newhart. Bob Newhart possessed something that fascinated Carson more than flashy celebrity stories: perfect comedic timing. When Newhart settled into the guest chair, Carson knew he was about to witness a masterclass in subtle humor, the kind of understated comedy that Carson himself had built his career on. Their conversations flowed like jazz music, each man instinctively knowing when to speak and when to let silence do the work. Newhart would start a story about his accounting days. Carson would add just the right comment at the precise moment, and Newhart would build on it seamlessly. What made Newhart special was his complete lack of desperation. Most comedians arrived with prepared material and a visible hunger for laughs. Newhart just talked, and somehow, everything he said was funny. Carson, who could spot fake confidence from across the stage, recognized authenticity when he saw it. When producers signaled it was time to wrap up, Carson would wave them off, something that almost never happened with other guests. Their professional relationship evolved into genuine friendship, evidenced by the golf invitations Carson extended. For a man who kept his private life completely separate from his television persona, asking Newhart to play golf was like being inducted into an exclusive club. Yet where Newhart brought subtle sophistication, Carson's next favorite delivered pure chaos. Number 7. Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds understood something about television that most celebrities missed completely. The best interviews weren't interviews at all. They were performances where both host and guest tried to outshine each other. When Reynolds appeared, viewers knew they weren't getting a typical promotional chat. They were witnessing a friendly war. Reynolds arrived with props, water pistols hidden in his jacket, shaving cream concealed behind his chair, and a mischievous grin that warned Carson to stay alert. The most famous ambush happened during what was supposed to be a serious discussion about Reynolds' upcoming film. Mid-sentence, Reynolds grabbed a can of shaving cream and hit Carson directly in the face. The audience gasped. Attacking America's late-night king on live television seemed like career suicide, but Carson's reaction surprised everyone. He laughed harder than anyone had seen him laugh in years, genuinely delighted by the unexpected assault. Off camera, he continued giggling for several minutes, telling producers it was the best surprise he'd had all year. Carson loved being caught off guard because it happened so rarely. Most guests were too intimidated to risk genuine spontaneity. Reynolds treated Carson like an equal rather than an authority figure, and that fearlessness earned him a permanent place in Carson's good graces. But Reynolds' unpredictability was just one flavor Carson appreciated. His next favorite brought something that actually made the host nervous. Number 6. Don Rickles. Don Rickles occupied a unique position in Carson's world. He was simultaneously one of Carson's closest friends and the only guest who could make the host genuinely nervous. When Rickles was scheduled to appear, Carson would actually spend extra time preparing, not because he feared embarrassment, but because he knew Rickles would push boundaries that other comedians wouldn't dare approach. During one particularly memorable appearance, Rickles went further than usual, making jokes about Carson's personal life, his marriages, and his reputation as a difficult boss. The studio audience fell silent, unsure whether they were witnessing comedy or actual conflict. Carson's face remained neutral, but backstage crew members could see the tension in his posture. What happened next became Tonight Show legend. Instead of cutting to commercial, Carson leaned back and let Rickles continue. He recognized that genuine comedy sometimes required genuine risk, and he trusted Rickles enough to let him operate without safety nets. Their friendship extended far beyond the show. Carson and Rickles were part of a regular poker group that included other entertainment industry veterans. In those private games, away from cameras and audiences, Carson could relax completely. Rickles would insult everyone at the table with equal enthusiasm, and Carson would laugh until his sides hurt. The poker games revealed something important about Carson's character. Despite his reputation for being cold and distant, he craved genuine friendship with people who treated him like a regular person, rather than a television icon. Number 5. Robin Williams. Robin Williams brought an energy to The Tonight Show that both thrilled and terrified the production staff. When Williams was scheduled to appear, everyone knew they were in for an unpredictable ride. His rapid-fire improvisation created television magic that couldn't be replicated or controlled. Carson, who built his career on precise timing and careful preparation, found Williams' manic spontaneity both fascinating and challenging. During Williams' appearances, Carson often became a straight man, setting up scenarios and then watching Williams explode into comedic territory that no one could have planned. But behind the brilliant performances, staff members noticed troubling signs. Williams would arrive at the studio bouncing off the walls, talking non-stop, sweating profusely despite the air conditioning. His behavior suggested something more than natural enthusiasm. The cocaine epidemic of the 1970s and 80s had claimed many entertainment industry casualties, and Williams was fighting his own well-documented battle with addiction. Carson, who had witnessed the destruction that drugs brought to performers' careers, watched Williams with a mixture of admiration and concern. During one particularly intense appearance, Williams performed brilliantly for the audience, but collapsed in his dressing room immediately afterward. Carson quietly visited him backstage and spoke to Williams seriously about getting help. It was a rare moment of genuine mentorship from a man who typically kept his personal opinions private. Carson's relationship with Williams represented something deeper than entertainment value. He saw tremendous talent being threatened by personal demons, and despite his usual emotional distance, he felt compelled to intervene. Number 4. Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers owed her career to Johnny Carson, and everyone in show business knew it. After years of struggling in small comedy clubs, Rivers finally got her break in February 1965. When she finished her set that night, Carson looked directly into the camera and said 5 words that changed her life forever. "You're going to be a star." Rivers became a regular guest, and eventually Carson's permanent guest host when he was away. For over 20 years, Rivers was Carson's chosen successor, his comedic daughter, in an industry that rarely showed such loyalty. Carson genuinely enjoyed Rivers' company and trusted her judgment about comedy in ways he trusted very few others. But in 1986, everything changed. Rivers accepted an offer to host her own late-night show on Fox, directly competing with The Tonight Show. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal. Rivers had never discussed the opportunity with Carson, never asked for his blessing, never even warned him it was happening. Carson learned about Rivers' defection from a newspaper article. The man who had discovered her and treated her like family found out about her betrayal from the entertainment press. The hurt went deeper than business concerns. It was a violation of the trust and loyalty that Carson valued above everything else. Carson's response was swift and permanent. He banned Rivers from The Tonight Show, refused to take her phone calls, and never spoke to her again. The coldness lasted until Carson's death in 2005. Rivers publicly expressed regret about the falling out, but Carson never forgave what he saw as the ultimate betrayal. Number 3. James Garner. James Garner occupied a special place in Carson's heart because he represented authentic American masculinity without the Hollywood pretense that Carson had grown to despise. When Garner appeared on the show, viewers witnessed something rare, a genuine conversation between two men who genuinely respected each other. Garner never arrived with prepared anecdotes or recycled promotional material. Instead, he brought stories about the human side of Hollywood, the practical jokes between takes, the friendships with crew members, and the mistakes that rarely made it into official industry narratives. Carson was fascinated by Garner's complete lack of self-importance. Despite starring in beloved series and major movies, Garner talked about being a movie star the way most people discuss their office jobs. He described working with Steve McQueen with casual indifference that Carson found refreshingly honest. What impressed Carson most was how Garner treated everyone around him. He arrived with no entourage, thanked crew members, and remembered the names of pages and camera operators he'd met years earlier. Carson, who paid close attention to how guests behaved when they thought no one important was watching, was deeply impressed by Garner's consistent decency. Number 2. Jack Benny. Jack Benny wasn't just another guest, he was Carson's comedy father figure. When Benny appeared, viewers witnessed a rare reversal. Carson, typically the master of his domain, transformed into a respectful student in the presence of one of comedy's greatest pioneers. Carson had studied Benny's radio shows obsessively as a young performer, learning the timing, the reactions, and the subtle art of getting laughs with just a look. Every aspect of Carson's comedic philosophy could be traced back to Benny's influence, and Carson never forgot that debt. During Benny's appearances, Carson would actually direct the cameras to focus on his guest rather than himself, something that was practically unheard of. He wanted to showcase Benny's impeccable timing, even at the expense of his own screen time. Carson kept a framed photo of Benny in his office, the only celebrity picture he displayed in his private workspace. That image said everything about who Carson truly admired most in the entertainment world. Number 1. The guest who earned Carson's deepest respect. At the very top of Carson's list sat a guest whose identity might surprise you. It wasn't a comedy legend or Hollywood icon, but someone who embodied everything Carson valued about genuine human connection in an artificial industry. On May 22, 1992, Johnny Carson hosted his final Tonight Show. After 30 years of entertaining America, he was stepping away from the desk. As the credits rolled, viewers had no idea about the private phone calls Carson would make later that night. Carson spent his final evening making personal calls to the people who had meant the most to him during his remarkable run. The list was shorter than most people would expect, reflecting Carson's carefully guarded nature and his distinction between professional colleagues and genuine friends. The secret Carson took to his grave wasn't about scandals or hidden controversies. It was about the loneliness of being America's most beloved entertainer, while struggling to form authentic human connections. His favorite guests weren't just the ones who entertained his audience best. They were the ones who reminded him that genuine human moments were still possible, even under the bright lights of network television.